In this video, I'll show you the impact that our relationship with others can have on our mental and physical health. When companies go overseas and convert from English to the international market or vice versa, it can be downright hilarious. For example, Electrolux, a Scandinavian vacuum manufacturer, used the following in an American ad campaign: "Nothing sucks like Electrolux." Needless to say, it was pulled after 2 days. In Taiwan, the translation of the Pepsi slogan, "Come alive, you're in the Pepsi generation," came out, "Pepsi will bring your ancestors back from the dead." In Chinese, the Kentucky Fried Chicken slogan, "Finger lickin' good," translated as, "Eat your fingers off." When General Motors introduced the Chevy Nova in South America, it was unaware that Nova means it won't go in Spanish. After the company figured out why it wasn't selling, the team changed the name to Caribe for its Spanish language markets. Miscommunication can be a significant source of conflict and stress, but it's healthy to have people in your life. In fact, lack of social contacts was found to be a stronger risk factor for colds than smoking in one study. Feeling connected with other people is incredibly important for our overall health and well-being, but sometimes people can stress us out. There's a saying, "Don't worry when I argue with you, worry when I stop," because it means there's nothing left to fight for. Would you agree that arguing shouldn't always be seen as a negative element of your relationship? What are healthy ways of arguing? Well, one recommendation that's pretty important is learning to recognize when you need to take a time out, because it's difficult to get anything resolved when emotions are high. But of course, it's important to take a time in as well. A time in is simply identifying a time when you'll revisit the issue. I need a timeout, give me an hour, or however much you need. Another recommendation for managing conflict is using the mirror technique, where you simply paraphrase back to each other with no judgment or opinion. You simply paraphrase back to the person what they said. Many times people repeat what they've said over and over during an argument because they feel like the person isn't listening and they're seeking validation. And actually, the other person probably isn't listening if they're not incorporating the mirror technique. But if the other person knows that they're going to have to paraphrase back what you said, they're going to listen much better. Why has the mirror technique shown to be so effective? What's the big deal with paraphrasing? Well, having someone paraphrase back to you what you said without including his or her personal opinions can be incredibly validating and provides a more conducive environment for resolving conflict. Here's how it works. You talk for up to a minute at a time. I'd say keep it closer to 30 seconds because then it's hard for the other person to remember everything when they go to paraphrase. If you're not able to get everything out in 60 seconds, you can speak again after the person has paraphrased until you get everything out. For example, "I'm really frustrated because you ate all my ice cream," or whatever, you fill in the blank. Then the person paraphrase what you said. They might also include an interpretation of your feelings if you didn't in your initial message. "So you seem frustrated that I ate your ice cream." And then person B ends with, "Is that right?" If you need to clarify, do so at that point. "Yeah, I'm frustrated that you ate my ice cream, but I want to make sure you understand that the real reason I'm so frustrated is this is the 5th time you've done this, and I've asked you not to do this several times now. I feel like you disregard and disrespect my feelings." Then your partner needs to paraphrase again until he or she gets it right. It's important that the paraphraser does not include any of his or her opinions while in the paraphraser's role. "So what I heard you say is that you don't like it when I eat your ice cream and you seem pretty irritated when I do this, but you ate my ice cream before and I didn't get mad at you." Boom, this invalidates the person's message. Does this really work? It does. The mirror technique is a technique that has been shown to result in only 1.5 errors on average out of 100 communication messages. To put this into context, researchers estimate that 1 in 5 messages is not completely or accurately understood, even if someone is a quote-unquote good communicator. So the mirror technique is actually a really effective technique if done appropriately. Another suggestion is to learn how to agree to disagree in an agreeable manner. Agreeing to disagree doesn't mean you agree with the person's opinion. It just means you both recognize and accept that you both have different points of view, and that's okay. We've all grown up in different homes with different families and different cultures, with different ways of communicating and different ways of resolving conflict. It's not surprising that sometimes our perceptions and opinions are so incredibly different. We have to agree to disagree and accept that we're all so very different. Another suggestion, be a content communicator, which means mean what you say and say what you mean. Or better yet, mean what you say and say what you mean, but don't say it mean. Here's an example of not being a content communicator. A couple was on a road trip together out in the middle of the desert with the windows rolled down. The woman says to the man, "It's really hot, dear," because she wanted him to turn on the air conditioning. The man, thinking he was an empathetic listener, says, "It really is," and they drive on. She was horrified that he didn't turn the air conditioner on. She thought she'd give him one more chance. The woman sees a convenience store up ahead. She says to the man, "Honey, I'm really thirsty." In her mind, if he doesn't stop, she thinks he doesn't love me. He never cared. He was tried and convicted in the court of her mind. She thinks that she shouldn't have to tell him. He should know her well enough to read her mind. She believes if you have to ask, it doesn't count. A content communicator would say, "Can we stop so that I can get a drink at the 7-Eleven up ahead?" There's no expectations of someone being able to read your mind. Doesn't it make much more sense and save time and energy to simply say, "Let's stop at the convenience store up ahead so I can get a drink," instead of, "Honey, I'm really thirsty"? Stephen Covey has said we create many negative situations by simply assuming that our expectations are self-evident and that they're clearly understood and shared by other people. Quick note about workplace conflict. In one study, employees reported spending an average of how many hours per week dealing with conflict at work? What do you think? An hour and a half, 2 hours, or 2.8 hours? It was 2.8 hours per week. The lack of effective conflict resolution skills is cited as the most common reason for violence and divorce. One last recommendation, be mindful of your nonverbal communication. Verbal communication refers only to the actual words spoken. Touch, body language, also known as adapters, facial expressions. These are examples of nonverbal communication. There's one type of nonverbal communication that appears to be at the heart of a large percentage of conflict because it can be so offensive, and that is paralanguage, which refers to the way in which you say words. How many of you have been offended not by the words that were said, but how the person said those words? It's been said that 10% of conflict is due to differences of opinion, and 90% is due to tone of voice. I love the quote, "An eye for an eye will only make the whole world blind." Learning to effectively resolve conflict is an important coping technique and should definitely play a role in our stress management efforts. Let's now talk about this thing called relaxation in my next video.